garage and whatnot. Is this one of those things that's going to happen so often that we need to create an ordinance for this, or is this something that we can look at a variance and say, okay, in this neighborhood, on this lot, a tiny house would be appropriate, and we can allow a variance to the regular city ordinance and allow a tiny house to come in? Or do we need to go through the whole effort of putting an ordinance together?
Mr. Bozeman and council members, as a matter of fact, I was talking with Crystal Testerman from YV-COG today. We'd hope to have someone from YV-COG be down here this evening.
Happens so often. Sorry.
Okay. The YV-COG's planners are looking at the tiny house or codes. They had a project in Yakima where they were to build 24 tiny house. It was a project they had money for, 24 tiny houses, and they ran into the problem within the city of Yakima's building code, that they only would have stick-built homes. Now, a lot of these tiny houses are already built, and you can buy them. As a matter of fact, Yakima Valley Manufactured Housing has several that are on their short floors. The only thing that we are probably interested in doing is probably adjusting codes to allow for. I don't think we have to build a whole new ordinance, but rather come up with a code that allows for. As a matter of fact, the Washington State, let me see, where's my note here? It was the state comprehensive plan has been making some. They've written into their comprehensive code about tiny houses. So to bring it back to the council, maybe Larry, I can't remember his last name. I want to say Madison or something, and I think that's wrong. Matson from YV-COG has agreed to be here on the 14th and give a presentation on tiny houses so we can further address it if that's the wishes of the council. But there is some movement going on as far as in other communities allowing for tiny homes. What they ended up in Yakima with, they were allowed to, because of the codes up there, they were only allowed to build two, ended up in Terrace Heights. It was a huge project, and it got a little expensive because of the whole stick-built house ideas. And of course, with the tiny homes, there will be the things about putting into a sewer and utilities and those kinds of things. I do think they're viable. I do think that it's something that we can find in our community, places where people might want those for, like mother-in-law homes, young people, and such as they're wanting them for just single-person homes. There's affordable housing. The tiny houses themselves run about $40,000, $45,000, depending on, how much you want for them. But anyway, if that's there, like I said, need a little bit more information as far as what other communities are doing as codes, and I think from there we could do the adjustment to ours to allow for. But I don't think we have to create a whole new ordinance.
Okay, because my concern is twofold, and the biggest one, of course, is that it might be a passing fad. That now we've gone through the trouble of coming up with an ordinance, and 5 years from now, nobody's going to be using these tiny houses anymore. And that's the biggest one. And then the other one is in the words of the Herald Republic, Saturday's edition, talks about tiny houses, and their definition of it is a single-wide mobile home with granite countertops, which I thought was a little harsh. But
yes, and that is.
are we going to end up with these homes that somebody's going to live in for a few years and decide that they need to get something bigger, and they're going to sell it, and it's going to turn into some sort of a trash heap, eyesore, or possibly be unable to sell? So those are the two major concerns that I have. As far as the buildings themselves, I don't have a problem with it as long as we can make sure that we're all working in the same direction on it.
Exactly. And I can't speak to the fad part of it. I do know, mobile homes, they were a fad, manufactured housing, houses on wheels, trailer houses, those were a fad. People are still building them and using them, and so I don't know, but it's something that I think that there's some. I've had a number of folks who have come to me and said, when are you going to get that in play? And when I was talking to a woman who works for the Valley Manufactured Housing, she said that's the big thing. People come in every day wanting to put up a tiny house, but because of the codes, they're, they have to walk away from that.
Yeah, and I've been in the units
Yeah.
at Valley Manufacturing
Yeah.
Housing, and those are nice units.
They're
They're
nice
small.
units. They're
You know,
small.
I'm a tall guy, and they really make me feel cramped up, but they're not bad.
Yeah. But if that's okay with the council members, we can have Mr. Batson be here at our 14th meeting and do a presentation and give us a little bit more up to date. YVCOG did have a presentation at their last membership meeting, so they do have all that information. And a lot of the concerns that you're just mentioning now, I think they'll be able to address. And like I said, the state has built into their state comprehensive plan for tiny homes. There's a lot of them going into like the Seattle areas and Portland area and, larger metropolitan areas. So I do think that there's something that are viable for our community. Okay, but that's what I have on that. Yes, Mr. Stribler.
Just for the record, the agenda for tonight was not on the city website until sometime today, so I'm not sure if we're in violation of the Open Meeting Act because it was not posted. It wasn't on this morning at 9 o'clock. I don't know. It is now, so I don't know when it came on, but it was not on this morning.
Yes, if you would, Mr.
Thank you, Councilor Stremler. Councilor Stremler is correct. On Friday afternoon, as the city clerk was attempting to complete preparations of the agenda for today, she was able to get them transmitted to our paper of record, the Yakima Herald Republic, and to the council members. There were technical difficulties with the PrimeGov application on the city's website that prevented her from being able to upload the full materials to the council website. We were able to get those resolved with technical support from PrimeGov this morning around 10 a.m. We conferred with council on the impact of not having that posted on the website. Their recommendation and advice is that it is permissible to proceed. We attempted to meet the intent and spirit of the Open Public Meetings Act. If we move forward with any of the action items on the agenda, there's no mechanism under the law that would call any of those actions into question or make them invalidated because the notice was not posted. But we do appreciate you bringing it up, and I'd had a chance very briefly before the meeting to advise the vice mayor, or deputy mayor, sorry, because we did want to make sure before we get to the action items in particular that the council is aware of that and at your discretion can determine whether you wish to still proceed with those action items or defer them to the 14th. There are some logistical challenges with delaying the item number 4. It just has a compression issue on the timeline for that project, but depending on the will of the council, we would try to make that work as well. So we'll leave that to your discretion as you go through the agenda. For the discussion items, they did not anticipate or they did not see any issue with that because these are just simply open discussion, and you're not making any taking action or decisions on those points, and they'll come back for further public discussion.
Are there any questions in regard to that? I know that I received my agenda on Saturday
On the email, yeah.
Yes.
via email. So at that point, just made that assumption that it was, of course, uploaded to the site because I didn't go there. I did go to far enough to look to make sure what was on the agenda, but so no anyone else on that regard. Can I just step back for a second? And you knew that Mr. Restucci
He got an excused absence, Madam Mayor.
Okay. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is the marijuana ordinance discussion. I think we have some paperwork here on that. I think this was we were bringing it up to determine whether or not we were going to lift the ban. We've had several discussions. Yes.
Sorry, point of order real quick. I got a little conflict. I know you weren't here at the start of the discussion for the tiny house thing. I just want a little clarification before we move forward because Mr.
Sure.
Henry had requested that this move forward to the Planning Commission, and then now it's been brought up that we're going to have Mr. Mattson on the 14th potentially, so I'm not sure. Are we waiting till after we hear Mr. Mattson's discussion, or what?
Would it hurt, if you don't mind, Madam Mayor? I apologize.
Go ahead.
Would it hurt to have the Planning Commission jump on? Because like you said, and like I mentioned a little before you walked in, it really is going to come down to the building size, the ordinance of 1,300 square feet to attached garage. To hear what some of the talent on the Planning Commission has to say about just lowering that. So we might not, like you said, we're not going to have to change a lot of stuff if they come up with something that we can all agree on and just get them working on it. Let's see what they have. And when we have them, let's use them.
Well, I think what we want to do, if you're going to do it with the Planning Commission, I certainly think that we want to have some more material, whatever information we can give them going forward. I know that we've given quite a bit of information to Mr. Ailing regarding the tiny houses and on some of the codes and things, so those are some things that he probably could be looking at with the Planning Commission.
Well, I understand it will take a couple months, for maybe the 14th they could see it. I don't know. I just
Madam
thought
Mayor.
they could get it.
Yes.
I do believe, obviously, having sat on the Planning Commission in the past, I don't think it's I don't think it's the right step for us to send him right away. Because when we, and I see when I was in the Planning Commission that we used to get stuff and it was like gray. So what do we do with this? Do we sit on it? Do we talk about it? Do we just, say, hey, we looked at it and move on? So I really think we need to get our ducks in a row. Now we have a plan of action sent to the Planning Commission, say this is what we want you to work on, versus just an overview of the whole program. I think it's something that I've never heard anybody say, I want a smaller house. I own a few of them, and nobody has told me I want a smaller house than I want to have right now. So again, there must be a niche market that's interested in these small houses, and if that's the case, by all means, I think we should move forward. But I think if it's going to the Planning Commission, it needs to be,
We need some more material.
they need some guidance versus us just tell them start working on this. And again, I've been on there, so I know how it is. And when I was out there, what do we do with this? So that's my perspective. And I think if we're going to get somebody down here on the 14th, it's going to give us more information. I think it'll allow council to make a decision. Hey, this is what we really want you to work on versus this is the whole package, and it's a big deal, because it's going to take them a long time to work on it. If we narrow it down to whatever we feel it's important for them to look into, I think it's going to make it a lot faster, and it's going to make it more productive for them to come back with some suggestions.
Okay.
Yeah, I tend to agree with Mr. Guerrero on this one. We have been accused in the past of being a little vague in our direction to Planning Commission, and we want to avoid that if we can in the future. These folks, they're willing to work, they're willing to help out, but they sure would like some direction, and so I'm coming down on his side on that one.
I tend to agree as well. I think that we want to give the Planning Commission as much information as we're able to gather, so that they can take a look at it and come down on the side of whether we allow them or not. But I don't think that it would hurt any to even to invite one of the planning commissioners to be at that meeting to kind of probably whoever the chair is going to be. I understand you're having elections at your tomorrow night.
Right.
So maybe if they could, whoever that chairman is could come, or whatever delegate could come to the 14th, so they could hear the presentation in person. So it's not third person. Does that seem reasonable?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
All right, thank
So
you.
we will go that in that direction then, Shane. No, Mr. Ailing, excuse me. Okay. That's been moving back to this other discussion on the agenda. We've had it come before us a number of different times. Tonight, I think we're just discussing it again, and in a matter of of course, we have to lift the ban in order to move forward with an ordinance, and that's a vote that we would need to do. take one way or the other. Now, we don't have to do that tonight, but we do need to discuss. If we do talk about the ordinance, there's a couple of places where we probably can make some changes. I think there's been some talk in the past, reference whether churches needed to be included within the 1,000
feet.
Yeah, 1,000 feet. Whether that's also there was like libraries was included in our original ordinance that we had brought. The original ordinance that had been brought before the council before the ban was put in place, if I remember correctly. So there was just some discussion there whether or not we wanted to leave those on there, or because the main concern was about children. It wasn't about adults. Churches and things, I mean, they I think by virtue of the fact that they're churches, we shouldn't have to worry about that. And same with the library, perhaps, might be more so. I know that there's been a lot of discussion as to whether the city wants this. We've had a number of people come to our council and urge us not to lift the ban. So basically the thing is do we want to go ahead and bring the ordinance forward and lift the ban and move on with putting marijuana ordinance into play.
So, Madam Mayor, I'm a little confused, excuse me, on this one, because coming into the meeting, we've got this document in front of us, this council agenda cover sheet, and are we discussing whether, I mean, the Planning Commission has asked if council really wants them to take the issue up based on what the hospital and the school district has done. Are we answering that question tonight, or are we discussing whether we want to bring the lifting the ban up to the future meeting?
I think probably both. I think we need to discuss both issues. The hospital and the school district, as you said, have been pretty vocal in their urging us to leave the ban in place. And we do need to discuss that. I think that's we've not done that as a council. So tonight, if that's part of, would certainly be part of the.
We're not going to be discussing, I mean, we're not going to be taking a vote on lifting the ban this evening or anything like that.
No, not at all. Not at all. This is just maybe to take a look at the ordinance and then also to take into consideration the discussions that we've from the community before. So
Okay, I just want to clarify that. Thank you.
no, good. And thank you for doing that.
Madam Mayor, so what we have in front of us, is that what the Planning Commission worked on and is sending over to us to review, or what is this that we're looking at?
I believe, Mr.
Madam Mayor, if I may, yes, that's correct. The council previously gave direction to the Planning Commission and planning staff to develop a draft ordinance based on previous guidelines and direction. That has been done. They've worked on that in 2018, and this was an opportunity. This in front of you is the result of their deliberations and work to date. They did, as noted in the cover sheet, kind of bring back and resurface, having reviewed this draft. They did bring also back the issue or question to the council. Did the council wish to revisit its original direction to them? But Mr. Ailing is prepared to talk about what's in the ordinance, how it reflects the previous guidance from the council, and then answer any questions that you have, or receive any direction that you'd like to give back to him and to the Planning Commission as far as any revisions or refinements for consideration.
Thank you. That's my question.
Okay.
And I think at this point we already gave Planning Commission guidance, so we're waiting for the final product so council can make a decision whether we want to move forward or not.
Correct.
So the fact that the chairman of the Planning Commission is asking us, he already has directive. So it's not that we, on a meeting, we change our mind or anything yet. So we still haven't decided whether to go forward or not on the actual allowance of marijuana in the city, sales in the city. We still need to see the final product for at least for me to make a decision. If it makes sense, then at that point I'll vote either one way or another. But if we don't see the final product, I have nothing to vote on.
Is this from the Planning Commission? I didn't think the Planning Commission took any action.
Well, perhaps we could ask Mr. Ailing to
Yes.
discuss that for us.
Yes, what I have before you is the draft that I presented to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission worked their way through this draft. There are a couple of areas that they, at their October meeting, had made mention that they would like to probably Section 1767050, the processing, and then the production, the section above that, 040. They had made mention that they maybe just, instead of using what language I had put together, just to prohibit those two sections, so that would be different in coming from the Planning Commission in a draft. But they got towards the end of the meeting and decided, rather than spending additional time on this, and there had been a meeting that transpired, a council meeting since the directive was given, where the school district came and presented information and provided an actual document stating their opposition to it, and then the hospital had also spoke out stating their opposition to it. The motion got made, and I'm kind of stuck as the middleman, the staff liaison, presenting the information, and that's why I kind of drafted a bullet point thing. Commissioner Farmer at that meeting made the motion to say, let's not present a final draft to council. Let's ask them, do they have a change in heart? Do they still want the directive to work on this, or do they want us to not go further with the position of the two major other players, not players, I shouldn't say that word, but the school district and the hospital. So that's kind of where I can't say that this draft was before them. I wouldn't say that this is the draft that the Planning Commission is moving forward to council. They stopped their tracks and stopped working on this after the motion was made to get direction. Do they want them to continue? Do you not want them to continue? So that's the motion that moved forward that I brought up in the items from department heads in our November meeting. And I know that we didn't, it was the desire of the council not to act on that information that night. It was brand new, presented at the end of the meeting, and we're just kind of waiting for directive. Are we tired of dancing back and forth? Do we move forward? Do we send it to the commission saying, no, we understand those positions and they're just positions, give us a product to refine or adopt or approve? That's kind of the way I see it, from kind of being the in-between person here. So,
Well, just before you say that, I think it was our intention that they should continue forward. I don't think that there was any objection from the council. We took the letters and so forth, but there was no change from the council's opinion going forward. Am I correct in that?
Yes.
There was no change in our opinion as to we wanted them to work on this ordinance. I don't believe that there was any.
I don't recall any discussion for them to proceed or not proceed. I think it was kind of dropped.
But there was no decision
right.
not to
Correct.
proceed.
There was no decision either way, correct.
So
That's
that
not
being
true.
said, they should be going forward with it. Yes, Mr. Henry.
Okay, we directed you guys 3 times. Jamie, this is horse duty. I'm telling you straight up. We directed you 3 times, March, July, and September. I lost track. We told you to move forward with bringing us an ordinance. I apologize for raising my voice. Fact is, the planning committee's made themselves very clear on what they want to do with the ordinance. They don't want nothing to do with it. It's very clear, 6-0, it says right here. They want nothing to do with it. So the fact is, what it comes down to is council's decision and the city manager coming up with an ordinance. So I would say that the city manager come up with an ordinance for us to adopt when the time comes for us to vote on it. Because you guys have made yourself very clear on what you wanted to do on the subject.
Well, let's be clear that it's the planning commission. there.
I would like to add to that is the council only voted on it once. Individuals don't direct the planning commission what to do.
That's not true, Ron. We voted on it 3 times.
We voted on it one time to send it to the planning commission. Is that correct? Mr. Birchman, do you remember
As
that?
I recall, we did vote on it one time.
One time.
To send it to planning commission, and then we came
Yep.
back with this letter, and then we, as Mr. Strummer said, it just kind of dropped at that point. But I do recall only one vote.
Yeah.
We've talked about it, I think, at least 3 times, and it was brought up that it should go to
Correct.
planning commission, but I don't know that we
There's
directed
been 3
planning
votes,
commission.
3 motions.
See, I don't remember
made.
3 votes, Mr.
One in March.
You may be
Okay.
right. We'd have to go back into the record. I'm not arguing, but that, I do recall one
Yeah.
time that we did send it to them.
But in any case, I don't think that there was any change in our directive to the planning commission.
We didn't discuss a change, and as Mr. Strummer said, I don't think we discussed it either way. We received the information, and
So,
I don't remember commenting on it, so.
right. So in that regard, then, not having made a decision one way or the other, it remains the first decision. The first decision to go through and make the decision, the work done on the ordinance, I believe. I think that's what the direction of the council was at that. I think we should go forward with that. Is there any objection to that?
I think the council should vote on that, send it back.
I don't think there's a matter of sending
a
it
vote
back. I think it's just for them to go forward with their work. It's not a matter of sending it back.
In 2013, Planning Commission came forward with a recommendation on a draft ordinance should council adopt the ordinance. And council since then has not adopted it, but that doesn't negate the work that the Planning Commission did.
Exactly.
At the same point, in the same way, Planning Commission at this point can work on a draft ordinance and council can still adopt or not.
Exactly.
So, I mean, it's not,
Thank you,
yeah,
Dean.
it's
I appreciate-
not
that's
something
exactly
that,
right.
that's
It's-
out of line. Planning Commission can do it. We
Well-
have sent it
It's
to
just
them.
right. It's just something to present to us. And you said you hit it right on the head there, Dean. I couldn't have said it better. It's something just to bring to us to vote on. It's not a vote.
Well, it's
Bring
not
it
even
to
for
us.
us to vote on, it's whether we lift the ban or not, and then at that point, then we would have to consider the ordinance, if we lift the ban, and we haven't voted whether we're gonna lift the ban or not.
And we haven't done
On
that.
the other hand, if council chooses to vote on it before planning commission brings us a draft ordinance, then we can say, this vote is pending, I mean, enactment of whatever we decide is pending a draft ordinance from planning commission, so.
There's that as
We
well.
are still the council here.
That's right. That's right. But I think in terms of what the planning commission should be doing is that they should continue their work on the ordinance and making, revisions or changes to the 2013 original ordinance that they were working on with the changes that maybe we talked about as far as some of the things that would consist as far as being 1,000 feet away from. There were a couple of things that were not necessarily in the state ordinance, model ordinance that the local ordinance did include. So those are a couple of things we did want them to look at, if I can remember correctly. But we do need to have the ordinance so that in the event that we do decide to lift the ban, we have the ordinance in place, or at least something to work from so that we can go forward. So I believe would that be correct in saying that that's the directive of the council as a whole?
No objection.
Okay, Mr. Hicks.
Yeah, well, they have to add in Yakima County's ban on production.
That won't have anything to do with us. What we do within city limits has nothing to do with what happens in Yakima County. This is just talking about what happens within the Sunnyside city limits.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
if I may ask a point of clarification, there was a suggestion made during the discussion, and I may have lost track, to redirect the work on drafting the ordinance to staff and to the city manager. Am I hearing that the council's will is still to have the matter be brought by staff back to the planning commission? I just wanted to make sure I understood that.
Well,
That's what I'm hearing.
Personally, I
pers-
prefer
personally-
planning commission.
Huh?
Personally, I prefer the planning commission to kind of work on that because that's their area of expertise. We have people in there who do construction, who do different things, and there's more minds better than one, as far as I'm concerned.
I think that having staff input on it is certainly apropos.
Thank you. Appreciate the clarification.
Right. Okay, are we all clear on that then? Okay, so that probably takes care of that discussion as well. So we might move on. And moving on to, our next is the Community Development Ordinance discussion. I believe, Mr. Boersma, you had something that you wanted to talk about on there? And might I ask also if you were going to talk about the Roger Brooks? I know you were there for the whole thing.
Madam Mayor, I have this beautifully printed out piece of paper sitting on my desk at home, which is not where I happen to be at the moment, and I apologize for that. I had it all ready to go. But actually, the subcommittee did not meet. What I would like, and just as a committee member, is input from council, ideas. We've all had some time to think about this, and this community development program is something that we really need to get in place and ready to go. And it's been what, a little over a year since that we've been talking about it. So what we're at the point right now is how are we going to administer this? And we've talked about this in a couple of different times. And so one of the ways, and obviously the way that I'm favoring, is kind of sort of the same way the LTAC is run, where the subcommittee receives applications and then makes recommendations on those applications to the full council. But unfortunately, the committee hasn't been able to meet. As we all know, November got a little bit crazy, and we all focused on November's craziness to the exclusion of everything else, I think. So I'm happy to get feedback, and then I'll definitely bring that into our next subcommittee meeting. I'm hoping to meet, by the way, hoping to meet this month and have this ready to present by the last meeting of the month.
Excellent. So we should probably, and Mr. Restucci is on that committee, and I also am on that committee. Absolutely, and I do remember a discussion that probably wasn't part of an actual meeting. We had intended to meet for whatever reasons, but that was one of the things that I know that we talked about as a council, that possibility of receiving applicants, and we did talk about how to administer it as well. I think from the council, we do certainly. I think we need some input there. How you all want to see us work on that?
I didn't get a chance to attend the Roger Brooks presentation, but for what we're talking about is basically what his suggestions were when he visited the city. Is that correct? And kind of giving us guidance. So, if you have a report on that next meeting, or when will we have a chance to see that?
I did get to go to that, and I will say it was an absolutely phenomenal report. Very thorough. I have to say, I cannot think of a job that is more enviable to be able to walk into a city and point out everything that's wrong and everybody that's doing something wrong, and then turn around and leave and not have to take any flack for it. But he laid it out. He spoke the truth. He showed us what we were doing well and showed us some areas of improvement that we should focus on. And some were really simple. Things like signage, improve signage to get people to downtown and to different points of interest, which is something that we can do quite easily. And it's just, let's get the funds together and make it happen. Obviously, after this past fall's budget negotiations, we know funds together is somewhat of a challenge. But other things involve community members, business owners, and that sort of thing. There's some struggles in some of these areas that need to be addressed. I've already talked to a couple of citizens in the community in the downtown business core who might be interested in being on a committee to start promoting downtown business and taking some action on different things. Obviously, this report happened not too long ago, so we haven't had a chance to meet yet. But there is interest in a couple of business owners who would like to be part of that committee. I'd like to see 4 or 5 people and have them kind of take the lead on it. I'm willing, or maybe other council members might be willing to be a liaison there, but I don't think that's something that should be necessarily council directed. I think the people who run day-to-day businesses in our downtown area especially need to be involved. But it's not just the downtown. I mean, we've got the whole Yakima Valley Highway corridor. We've got, that in itself is a business district in its own way. And so those folks need to be involved in this in some way as well. And there needs to be some buy-in. Because if we don't get the community to buy in, nothing's going to happen.
And that's absolutely true. Having sat through about the last half of the program, one of the things that happened immediately after is that people came up to me and said, how do I be a part of this group that can make these things happen. So there's a list of about 4 or 5 people that I've talked to, and it may be the same ones that Mr. Boersma has talked to, who are interested in jumping in there right now. And if we can get them together in the same room and maybe start as the community development, as Mr. Boersma indicated he was interested in being part of that, maybe to get them started. And let's see where they want to take it. I think, there were simple things like moving back the benches from they're too close to the curb. And something, that was, why are they so close? Why can't they be back a little bit further?
But see, that's the benefit of being an outsider. We look at the benches and say, hey, we've got benches on the sidewalk.
We're
That's
happy to have
fantastic.
benches.
He looks at the benches and says, yeah, you sit on the benches and looked at parked cars. Move it back
Yeah.
closer to the building so you can watch people walk by.
Yeah.
It's just little observations
Yeah.
like that. Dressing up the front of your building by putting some planters in front of it or some different things. Allowing, instead of maybe 24 inches out from the front of the building to put up a display, allow 36 inches so that you can do a little bit more. Just looking at things a little bit different and then encouraging the business owners to take advantage of that and do some creative stuff.
And I understand we will have a written report from Mr. Brooks coming, I think, was it in the next 6 weeks or something?
He said within 90 days,
within
yes.
90 days.
And the video has, to my knowledge, been posted on YouTube already, and
It
I've
is
spoken
there.
with people who have watched it, and they've commented to me, so people have seen it.
Yeah.
Can we get the link to the video?
I can show you how to
Here.
get there.
Well, yeah.
It's a 2-hour presentation, but it's worth it.
Okay, so the way to get to the video is you can go onto YouTube and search City of Sunnyside, or you can go onto our website by Googling City of Sunnyside,
It's pretty easy to find. City of Sunnyside, Washington, Roger Brooks destination presentation.
and it's
Second from the top.
right here,
There's a picture of Roger standing there.
and here's the link.
And even if you skim through it a little bit, I mean, there's a lot of the business owners that I talked to were really excited about it. I mean, people who are downtown, some who are out on the Yakima Valley Highway, who are also interested in being on this committee to move forward with it. And I know there's at least 5 of them, so that's a good start.
Well, email me the names that you have, and I'll go speak with them. And I'll
Right.
combine them with the people I have. And we may have some overlap.
Like I
but-
said, they could be some of the same, but I will do that. And they are eager to get started on it, and I do think that we don't want this to be another $35,000 study that goes on a shelf and nothing ever happens with it. We definitely want to take
We need
advantage
some
of that.
sort of action to get started.
We
in the month
need
of January,
action,
so I'd like to see
absolutely.
that happen.
Pardon?
Yeah, 262 views.
How many?
262?
262.
And just to let council know, my guys have all looked at it already. All my
That's-
public
oh, that's
guys.
half of them.
We're already looking at the signage, trying to get
Nice.
that worked on this spring. So just to let you know.
Oh, awesome. All right. Anything else from you, Mr. Boersma, on this? Let's, if you could set up a date and some time, and we'll get together and discuss this in some further depth. But as far as, if there's anything from the council as far as how they want to see this community development project work, and we worked hard to get an ordinance into play. If there's any way to how we can administer it, we do need some input on that. So please email us your thoughts.
I'd be happy to listen to all ideas.
Yeah, and there's even ones that might be off the wall in your own mind, send them to us anyway, because you never know. Could be the most brilliant one we decide to use, so. Okay. So now we're on to item D, the ambulance service interlocal agreement discussion. Mr. City Manager.
Madam Mayor, thank you. Councilors will recall there's been some previous discussions, I believe, on this topic. This is partnership that our fire and ambulance services are working out with the city of Grandview. The draft in front of you this evening, Chief Anderson will be able to go through that with you in detail, but the high level is it is still a bit of a work in progress. This draft is under legal review. It has been reviewed by staff from the city of Grandview, and our intent tonight is to let you have a chance to review it, provide any feedback or revisions or comments so that we have time to finalize those with the anticipation that both city of Sunnyside and then city of Grandview will be able to approve it at business meetings later this month. With that, I'll be happy to turn it over to Chief Anderson if he'd like to share any further details.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. How are you guys doing? I think Mr. Casey pretty much laid it out there. As you guys are aware, we had brought this up. This has been in the process, in the works since about 1st of April of 2018. We were hoping to have this. It was our target cooperative agreement here was first for September 1st and October 1st, and now we're down we're shooting for February 1st. As I mentioned before, we already provide services to Grandview. We are second in there at this point, secondary provider. We are licensed in 2 trauma areas. I think it's believed District 2 and District 3. And as a result, if Prosser was to pull out, we're going to inherit that area regardless. This was part of a goal to partnership between each other, better cooperative working relationships, both ambulance, fire department, public safety in general. And part of that was due to some budgetary issues. Grandview was not going to foot the entire bill. So this was what had happened is back in March, Prosser Ambulance, who operates in that area, not in contract. They were kind of doing it sort of a pro bono. Approached Grandview and said that they needed they were $602,000 in the red, and that they would like $180,000 a year from Grandview, or they were going to stop services. So at that point, Grandview reached out to Sunnyside and asked if there was any way that we could basically help them out. We looked at one of the first things when I came in. That was actually the day after I got offered the position. So that was one of the first things they emailed me. What our initial proposal was that we would have to expand full service, 6 additional personnel. That was going to be a little cost prohibitive for Grandview since it was such short notice. As a result, Astria Sunnyside Hospital, who we do have a business contract with, offered to offset the expense of that, an additional $215,000 a year, provided that that money was for assistance to Grandview and the Mabton area. That's in addition to our current $50,000 contract with them. Additionally, I did my best in trying to do the cost breakdown. Based in that, it's on the item D, Exhibit A, last page of this. Basically, we toned it down a little bit. The hospital was unable to add any more funding to it. I toned it down a little bit to basically in half of what the initial proposal was. And as a result, we also cut back half of what initial requested services were. In the interlocal agreement at this point, since Grandview does not have the facilities for it, they were hoping that they would get 12 hours of staffed ambulance in that area. They would also cross-trained personnel that would also be able to help with firefighting suppression, and would help Sunnyside whenever we have a fire in Sunnyside. Then that way Grandview's equipment would automatically be coming this way, whether with Grandview personnel or with Sunnyside personnel. So either way, Sunnyside will still get the benefit of those firefighters. And then at nighttime, our ambulances and equipment would come back here to Sunnyside and would be deployed from Sunnyside to Grandview after hours. In all, that estimated amount was pushing $603,000 a year, offset by the $215,000 that Astria Hospital was going to provide in goodwill. as a nonprofit organization. We estimated $151,000 in ambulance-generated revenue from transports. That number is actually potentially a little bit low. It's very conservative. And then there's EMS levy funds that would come available for doing those additional calls in Grandview and around a little bit around the area. So as a result, for the first 5 years, the rough estimate is around $130,000 to Grandview that they were going to pay us monthly. First year was going to be $10,880 per month, with the understanding, however, that if outside sources, funding from outside sources was to disappear, change, diminish, Medicare, Medicaid changes the billing rates or reimbursement rates, et cetera, that Grandview would be responsible for the difference. The idea behind this was to allow Grandview a 5-year window to come up with a better source of funding and creation of some sort of tax base or funding from their city limits that would offset the expense of this thing, so that the hospital then would no longer be part of the equation.
Are there any questions from the council?
Good question.
Yes, Deputy.
Chief, the goodwill from Austria Hospital, is that one time or is that ongoing?
That's an annual thing for 5 years.
Okay.
And they are going to pay that quarterly.
Okay. And the other question,
four payments.
okay. The other question, it says annual projected shortfall, and it has a Sunnyside acceptance of 24% of annual shortfall, partial for fourth FTE. Can you clarify that for me, please?
I can. So originally, this ILA would result in 3 additional FTEs, not 4. So originally in here was 4. What had happened was in June, as we mentioned before, this was going to be in September. We had the 4th FTE is a position vacancy that we currently have. So the plan was then that we would use the remainder of that money for that FTE for that year. So that 4th FTE is 100% funded now. So we would only have to add 3 more. So answer your question.
So in other words, we no longer have a shortfall because we are starting later in the year? And I didn't quite get the answer.
Okay, so basically, so what happened is we had the funds for a vacant FTE that it was unsure whether that FTE was going to remain for 2019.
Okay.
So that FTE was funded for 2019 in my budget.
Okay.
Originally, so it was funded 100%. We're only going to spend 33%. We're only going to cover 33% of that now.
Okay. Of the FTE because it was budgeted for 2019?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. The only concern I have is that it sounds like if we don't do it, we're still going to have to deal with Grandview. But at the end of the day, I don't feel like we need to spend Sunnyside tax dollars to support another community. So at this point, I do believe we need ambulance services. It's just to what degree are we going to be spending money to be able to keep the emergency ambulance service in Sunnyside and support other communities, because we are the only ones in the game basically in this area.
So this way it is now is 100% pass through. There is no out of expense to do this from from Sunnyside. This is already services that we're actually adding to our personnel to do the same services that we're already doing, and we would still have to do regardless. We just would have to do them with one less person per shift.
So I've brought up the same question. It's like my biggest concern, and I like the idea. My biggest concern is that Sunnyside doesn't go backwards financially. We can't afford to go backwards one penny financially, and so that is a big concern. As Mr. Guerrero said, I want to be able to provide services and help out neighboring communities as much as possible. There's obviously a risk that Prosser is going to want to pull out if this agreement gets signed, and then Prosser will be pulling out. And so if Prosser's not there, then Sunnyside will have to take up that role, right? We'll have to fill in the gap. And
we actually had today. We already were down there 2 times a day, both in Grandview.
And that was for free.
Yeah.
It's Grandview we're talking about, just to clarify, not Prosser, right?
So
Grandview.
Prosser Hospital, Prosser Ambulance Services is serving Grandview at this point, somewhat. Sorry.
Are they have a contract with Prosser to do that?
No,
Or
they
is
do
it
not.
just
There is
like
no
us?
contract.
Or is it that they dispatch like we dispatch out to
Close-
Grandview as
Closest unit.
closest unit? So it's really a matter of
And so right
our
now,
local agreement that we're trying to come up with Grandview.
and while that
Sunnyside.
funding is still, so that was where the other glitch is the other concern is, so we have this $50,000 that we normally had with the hospital. The hospital changed that amount to include the Grandview portion now. So at this point, they're offering us $265,000 a year instead of $50,000, provided that the service is provided to the Grandview area.
Mayor,
Yes,
if I
you
may,
would.
just as an observation coming in admittedly somewhat new to all of this situation, what has struck me about reviewing the agreement is that it does seem to me to be responsive to the very concerns that Council has expressed around financial viability and making sure that we are recovering the costs for services that we're going to be called upon to provide in the Grandview area, whether Prosser is the closest unit or pulls out entirely, however that plays out. This seems like the fire department has, and Chief Anderson has erred on the side of conservative estimates in projecting our costs and presenting those to the city of Grandview so that we are protecting our interests as best we can. The agreement also provides a mechanism whereby we can review and adjust the agreement if our conservative estimates prove not to be conservative enough, or if in fact we find that we can deliver the service less expensively than what is shown here. But either way, we have that ability, that safety valve in the agreement to make sure that we are not adding to the tax burden for the city of Sunnyside.
That's correct, and it's in Grandview's best interest. If once Prosser pulls out, we did leave a mechanism, as Mr. Casey pointed out, that to review annually or whenever we want, no later than September of each year, that if costs are up or down or whatever, and we have to readdress that amount, it's in Grandview's best interest to sit down and discuss that, because otherwise they'll be completely without the service.
Mr. Henry.
I like it because it kind of shows I believe we need regionalization in all of the aspects for fire and our police and just everything. And this is a good faith showing that we could do that and work with the other city to do that. And I think we've done a lot of great work on this, Ken. I really appreciate what you brought forward. I think this is what we need to do to regionalize, just a small step to look at it in a bigger way, with hopefully a larger, us being the middleman for jail and stuff, but this being the forestep for that. So I think it's a great idea, and I'd like to see us move forward on it.
I would agree. I'd like to see us move forward on this one, too. And if worse comes to worse, then we've always got September coming up. It's only 9 months away. That's not terribly far, as we all know. It comes very quickly. We're going to have a report. We're going to be able to make adjustments on there as necessary. So
the discussion tonight is then, do we want to move forward with this particular agreement and bring it to our January? Is there a more urgent timeline on that?
So the timeline. So just my understanding is that I working close with Grandview trying to get this so between the two councils. My understanding is that I was going to bring it for first reading tonight, so that the council had a week or whatever to think it over.
This is our first reading. Is that agreeable to the council?
And then
discussion only, so it could be at the next council meeting. It could just be first reading and be done with it. We don't have to do a first, second.
Sure.
Right.
So since we discussed tonight, and it sounds like most individuals are in agreement that this is something we want to move forward with, and at the next meeting it could just be presented and make a vote on it.
Well, I know after I went down to Grandview City Council meeting a couple weeks ago, right before Christmas time, and I think their goal was to present it to their council tomorrow, and the idea was they were shooting for something sort of final. Their hope was that we could get this thing going February 1st. So I'm thinking
Well,
within the
and
next two meetings.
I think that if we have it at our January, use this as our first discussion concerning the ordinance. I think we're in agreement on that. Have the reading at our January 14th, and there's no reason why the February 1st wouldn't be perfectly okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Chief. Okay, moving on to the ambulance utility rate ordinance, considering adopting an ordinance, amending and correcting. There's some changes in the ordinance. Is that my understanding, Mr. City Manager?
Yes, Madam Mayor, thank you, and council members. This is bringing back to you an ordinance that you adopted last year as part of your budget deliberations and final balanced budget. After some further review, it was learned that during the drafting of the ordinance last year, with the transitions and all the activity going on trying to get the budget put together, there were some inadvertent references left in the ordinance you adopted to an obsolete sections of the code. What this ordinance does is it corrects and updates those references to code sections. Otherwise, the content is identical to what you adopted last year to affect your budget. And so legal counsel advised that we bring that back to you essentially for technical corrections this evening to have those take effect consistent with the rest of your budget decisions. And I think Mr. Fisher can answer more questions if there are any.
Could you
Or
can you maybe point out what those particular issues were?
What was the code section that was?
It was so the actual Sunnyside, or I'm sorry, the actual ambulance utility is codified under Section 7.04. In the one that I presented to you, I was given that by someone else, another department head, and I inadvertently it was an error, and we thought that after it was found, it's the same ordinance. It was referenced to 13.32, which was the original ambulance utility, and that was repealed and changed to Section 7 at some point later. And as a result, speaking to the lawyers, they thought that we might be able to do this as a Scrivener's error, but it was later decided that it's probably better to just approach it as they're approaching it tonight.
Okay. Is there any thoughts by the council members?
Here's a question. I'm not sure this is Latin, but it says whereas the first, several whereas, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whereas, nunc pro tunc. What is that?
That's retroactive.
Retroactive in Latin, or what language?
Latin.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Now we know.
Very clever.
I'm glad you asked that because
what is this thing?
I was going to pretend I knew.
This was actually written by the lawyer. They sent this back, but yeah.
You know, they like those fancy words.
Yeah.
They can charge us more for those.
So besides the municipal code, nothing else has changed on this document, just a reference to the correct code. Is that correct?
This is Friday was the first I've read over this, and as far as I know, that nothing has really changed. It's the same ordinance that's in there now. It's just a different code number.
Yeah, it's just changing the code number to the correct code reference.
And I believe throughout wherever there was the error, they drew a line through it and put.
That's
the
what I
correct.
see. It seems to be the same code, part of the chapter that's being
704.
crossed out and added. So, but I just didn't see any wording change. So I'm not sure if something got deleted or not. But it sounds like it's just a matter of the code being updated.
Just the code number, the reference number.
And for these purposes, this is something that we can adopt this ordinance and amend it, correcting the ordinance. We can do that tonight.
Yes, ma'am.
So is there any motion, any other discussion, motions?
Madam, I'd like to make the motion that we adopt the ordinance amending and correcting ordinance 2018-09.
I second it.
And Ron Strimler seconds. Any discussion? I want to thank those who found that, and for the eagle eye on seeing that the codes are different and getting it into the right chapter. Yeah, just want to say that. So there being no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same side. I too vote aye. Motion carries. Okay. Jackie, you got all that? Okay. So the next one on our agenda this evening is the Stackhouse Bridge Replacement Project Bid Award. Yay, finally. Yay, we got something going there. So, Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I'll defer to Shane Fisher, Public Works Director, to brief you on this topic.
Thank you, Mr. Casey, Mayor, members of council. Yeah, we got some good bids on this project, as you guys can see. Engineer's estimate came in at roughly about $721,000 is what we were looking. Of course, this time of year we always get good bids. It's winter. Contractors trying to keep their guys busy, so it's always a good time to bid stuff. So, winning bid came in at $669,555. We budgeted $1.16 million for this project, but that also includes the engineering design for this project. So basically, we had I think 10 or 12 people on the plan holders list. Those include subs and general contractors. We had 6 people bid it. It's a great bid. We've went through it. Contractors upstanding, in a good shape. So we feel very good about this bid. So with that, I can answer any questions or comments.
When is the tentative start date once we award the contract?
We're looking, probably looking the first week of February, maybe the second week of February. We got to get insurance in place once we approve this, get contracts will be coming sometime this week. You authorize this tonight, and Mr. Casey will execute those contracts. Then they get insurance in place. We're looking probably first or second week of February.
In time frame for completion, do we know?
It's about a 60-day project, work days. So there is a little bit of a challenge with SVID. Obviously, the ditch, will have to be filled with water. So initially, we're going to try to de-water as best we can, do all the excavation, get the bridge abutments and everything poured in, all the concrete in there set and cured, get up out of the water line, and then allow them to fill the ditch if that happens. If we get to that point, which I'm sure we will, they'll be working over water towards the end of the project. So that's the plan.
Any other questions?
Just a comment. I just want to say thank you, Shane, for your work on that Stackhouse Bridge. I'm looking forward to that. So.
It's kind of expensive for just a little bridge.
It has been quite the
considering how old it is too. So
quite the change for me to see. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
I'm surprised the local contractors didn't apply. It's non-responsive. They're too busy, you think, or?
Well, it's a very unique. Bridge building's a little different. You're not going to see a lot of the local guys take something like that on.
Okay. Yeah, I was just kind of curious. So there's
specifications, things like that for bridge building. It's a state federal highways specification, so it's very very stringent, very strict. So a lot of people don't want to deal with it. It's
too much work
that it's worth. So
Yeah,
and the paperwork is painful. So.
I'm sure. So what is the desire of the council regarding the bid? for
Move to approve.
Stackhouse?
I'll second.
So Mr. Guerrero
I'll
makes a
happily
motion
second that.
to a bid. Who is the second?
I'll second that.
Okay. All right, so Mr. Henry seconds. Any further debate? Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same side. I too vote aye. Motion carries. Go forth
you.
and get that bridge gone. Thank you. I believe that that's the end of our agenda. I want to thank everybody for all their work on getting all of this going, getting us off to a good start for this year. Welcome, Mr. Casey. I'm sorry I was late to the meeting, but as I told you earlier today, I was watching my great-granddaughters, and that nap took a little longer than I thought it was going to. So, but anyway, there not being nothing further to come before the council, meeting is adjourned.